The night was colder than usual for late October. Wind swept over the empty stretch of Highway 40 in rural North Carolina, rattling the loose signs and bending the tall grass by the roadside. The hum of distant traffic was broken by the cry of something, or someone, small and desperate. Deputy Carl Rivers had almost finished his shift when the radio crackled. Possible infant left near mile marker 123. Caller reported crying sounds. His partner, Officer Jenkins, frowned, the kind of frown that meant he'd heard too many bad things in this world to hope for good news. When they arrived, their headlights cut through the fog and stopped on a cardboard box, half covered by an old blanket. Carl froze. The sound came again, faint, rhythmic, pleading. He moved closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. Inside the box lay a newborn girl, her cheeks red from the cold, her tiny hands trembling against the thin fabric. "She's alive," Carl whispered, wrapping the blanket tighter around her. Jenkins grabbed the radio. "Dispatch, we've got a live infant. Repeat, live infant. We need medical assistance immediately." At the local hospital, nurses rushed to warm the baby. They called her Baby Highway in the paperwork, but one nurse, an older woman named May, whispered, "She deserves better than that." For days, no one came forward. No missing child reports, no desperate mother knocking on the door. The town's newspaper printed her story. Newborn found abandoned by highway. Police seek answers. People left stuffed animals at the police station, and someone even offered to pay for her clothes. But what she really needed was a family. That's when Eleanor and Daniel Cole appeared. They were in their mid-30s, respected members of the community, unable to have children of their own. When Eleanor first saw the baby in the hospital crib, she didn't speak. She simply reached out, tears filling her eyes. "She looks like she's been waiting for someone," she whispered. A few months later, the adoption was finalized. The baby was named Aveline, meaning little bird. Aveline grew up in a modest house with a big porch, the kind where neighbors waved from across the street. Her childhood smelled of Sunday pancakes, lilacs from her mother's garden, and the faint scent of her father's aftershave as he read bedtime stories. Yet sometimes, on quiet nights, she'd wake up crying without knowing why. Eleanor would hold her close, humming softly until she drifted back to sleep. As Aveline grew older, whispers followed her, kind, curious ones. People would smile and say, "That's the girl they found by the highway." Most meant no harm, but for Aveline, each mention was like a small stone dropped into the calm water of her heart, rippling through the years. One afternoon, when she was 10, she overheard two women at the grocery store. "Poor little thing. Imagine what her mother must have gone through." "Or imagine what kind of woman would do that," the other replied. That night, Aveline sat in bed staring at her ceiling. Who was she? Why had someone left her behind? Her parents told her the truth gently, that she had been found, loved, and chosen. Still, somewhere deep inside, she wondered if love was enough to fill the hole left by a mother she'd never known. But then, something unexpected happened. Before we continue Aveline's incredible journey, take a second to subscribe to this channel and turn on the notifications, because what happens next will break your heart and heal it at the same time. And tell us in the comments, if you were Aveline, would you want to find the woman who left you behind? Years passed like chapters in a book Aveline didn't remember starting. By the time she turned 16, she had become the kind of girl who noticed everything. The flicker of sadness behind someone's smile, the silence between words. Perhaps that sensitivity was the legacy of her beginnings, written somewhere deep in her bones. She loved her adoptive parents fiercely. Daniel taught her to ride a bike on the same old road where she'd once been found, and Eleanor, always patient, filled their home with warmth and books. Yet there were moments when Aveline felt like she was standing in two worlds, one that loved her deeply, and another that refused to tell her who she truly was. One rainy afternoon, while helping her father clean the attic, Aveline found a small box labeled Early Memories. Inside were old photographs, birthday cards, and at the very bottom, a folded newspaper clipping. Her heart stopped. There it was. Baby found abandoned by Highway 40. Authorities still searching for mother. The photo showed a police officer holding a newborn wrapped in a blanket. Her. She carried the paper downstairs, her hands trembling. "Mom," she whispered. "Why didn't you tell me?" Eleanor froze. "We wanted to," she said softly, sitting down beside her. "But there's no easy way to tell your child she came into the world that way. We were waiting for the right time." Aveline's voice cracked. "So it's true? Someone really left me there?" Eleanor nodded. "Yes. But that's not who you are. You are loved, Aveline. You always have been." That night, Aveline lay awake listening to the rain against her window. Why would a mother leave her child? Was she scared? Sick? Heartless? The questions multiplied, weaving themselves into the rhythm of her life. By college, she had stopped asking out loud. The world moved on, and so did she. She studied criminal justice, a decision that surprised no one but herself. "You want to catch bad guys?" her roommate once joked. "No," Aveline said. "I want to understand why people do what they do." Years later, in her late 20s, she joined the local police department, the same one that had saved her life decades earlier. Her first day on duty, she passed by an old photograph framed on the wall. 2 officers, one holding a baby wrapped in a blanket. Her chest tightened. That tiny child had no idea that one day she'd wear the same badge. Aveline quickly gained a reputation for empathy. She handled domestic cases with patience, spoke gently to children, and sometimes sat in silence with victims who didn't know how to begin. Her co-workers admired her calm, though few knew the storm beneath it. One evening, as she drove home along Highway 40, the same road that had once decided her fate, Aveline slowed near mile marker 123. She parked on the shoulder, turned off the engine, and just sat there. The night was quiet except for the hum of insects and the distant whisper of passing cars. She imagined that night long ago, the headlights, the cold wind, the fear, and somewhere out there, a woman who had carried her for 9 months and then walked away. Aveline whispered into the dark, "Where are you now?" She didn't know that the answer was much closer than she thought. By the time Aveline turned 32, her life had settled into a calm rhythm, predictable, steady, almost peaceful. She had become Sergeant Cole, known in her department for her intuition and her unwavering kindness. Her days were filled with paperwork, patrols, and the soft hum of radio chatter. But beneath that surface calm, there was still a question she had never dared to chase. She often told herself she didn't need to know where she came from. She had a family, a purpose, a life built on her own choices. Yet sometimes, when she held an abandoned child or comforted a young mother in crisis, she felt a quiet ache inside, the echo of a story unfinished. One late summer afternoon, the department received a call about a missing teenager. Aveline and her partner, Officer Raymond Diaz, drove for hours searching through back roads and abandoned barns. They found the girl sitting alone behind an old gas station, knees drawn to her chest, mascara running down her face. She was 17, scared, angry, and pregnant. Aveline knelt beside her and spoke softly. "You're safe now, sweetheart. No one's going to hurt you." The girl looked up. "They'll never forgive me," she whispered. Aveline felt her throat tighten. Sometimes people forgive slower than we hope, but that doesn't mean you don't deserve a chance. Later, when the case was closed and the girl reunited with her family, Aveline sat in her car for a long time, staring at the horizon. She realized she had spent her entire life forgiving others, but had never forgiven the woman who left her behind. That thought haunted her. Weeks turned into months, and then came a routine Tuesday morning. Paperwork, coffee, the same gray sky over the town. Aveline was reviewing reports when the front door of the station opened. A woman stepped inside. She was in her late 50s, dressed plainly, her hands trembling as she clutched a worn purse. Her eyes were sunken, but there was something familiar about them, the color, the shape, the quiet sadness. The desk officer asked, "Can I help you, ma'am?" The woman's voice shook. "Yes, I need to speak to someone. I have to confess to something I did a long time ago." The officer hesitated, then gestured toward Aveline. "Sergeant Cole can take your statement." Aveline led the woman into a small interview room, offering her water. "Take your time," she said gently. "Whatever it is, we'll handle it together." The woman nodded, her fingers twisting around the purse strap. "I don't know how to start," she whispered. "I've carried this for 33 years. Aveline leaned forward. "You're doing fine. Just tell me what happened." Tears filled the woman's eyes. "It was near Highway 40, late at night. I left a baby there, my baby." The words hung in the air like glass shards. Aveline froze, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. The woman continued, her voice cracking. "I never stopped thinking about her. I never stopped seeing her face. I've lived with that moment every single day." Aveline couldn't speak. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Part of her wanted to run, to hide from the truth she had always imagined but never truly faced. Do you know what happened to her?" the woman asked, desperate. Aveline swallowed hard. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Yes, I do." The woman looked up, confused. You know her?" Aveline's eyes filled with tears. "I am her." Silence. Only the ticking of the clock between two lives, one that began beside a highway, and another that had carried the guilt of it ever since. The room seemed to freeze in time. Neither woman spoke for several seconds, the air thick with disbelief and fragile hope. Aveline stared at the woman before her. The trembling hands, the tear-streaked cheeks, the faint smell of laundry soap and fear. This was the person she had imagined in 1,000 different ways. A monster, a victim, a mystery. Now she was real. Human. The woman's lips parted, her breath shaking. No, that's not possible." Aveline's voice trembled but stayed firm. "My name is Aveline Cole. I was found near Highway 40 on October 29th, 1988. You said you left a baby there that night." The woman's shoulders collapsed and she began to sob. Deep, uncontrollable sobs that seemed to come from a place beyond language. "Oh God," she whispered, covering her mouth. "I prayed you'd lived. I prayed someone found you." Aveline sat still, her hands clenched on the table. She had imagined this moment for years, but none of those daydreams prepared her for the truth. The weight of a living, breathing mother sitting across from her. "What's your name?" Aveline finally asked. "Marianne," the woman said softly. "Marianne Hayes." Aveline nodded slowly. "Why did you leave me, Marianne?" The question broke her. Marianne pressed a trembling hand to her chest, gasping for air between tears. "I was 18. My parents didn't know I was pregnant. I hid it until the very end. I had nowhere to go. The baby's father, he left. I thought I could do it alone, but when you were born, I panicked. I didn't know how to feed you, how to keep you warm. I thought you'd die if I stayed. So I left you somewhere people would find you." Aveline's eyes glistened. "You left me by the highway." Marianne nodded, shame and pain blending in her trembling voice. "Yes. I waited in the dark until I saw headlights. I thought if someone found you fast enough, maybe you'd live. I wanted to go back, but I couldn't. I was so afraid they'd take me to prison. I've carried that night with me for 33 years. Aveline felt anger, sorrow, and confusion twist inside her chest. Part of her wanted to scream, to demand why love hadn't been enough. But another part, quieter and older, felt something else. Compassion. "You know," Aveline said softly, "I used to hate you. I used to picture your face and think you were heartless, but sitting here now, I don't see a monster." Marianne looked up, startled. "You don't?" "No," Aveline whispered. "I see a scared girl who made a terrible choice, and who's been paying for it ever since." Marianne covered her face again, sobbing harder. "I never thought I'd deserve to see you. I just needed to confess before I died. I didn't think you'd be the one to hear it." Aveline took a long, shaky breath. Her training told her to stay composed, but her heart overruled every rule she'd ever followed. Slowly, she reached across the table and placed her hand over Marianne's. For the first time, the woman stopped crying. Their hands, one older, one younger, stayed there in stillness like two pieces of a story finally fitting together. "You're not under arrest," Aveline said quietly. You've already served your sentence. It was inside you all these years. Marianne's tears fell again, but this time they were lighter. Can you ever forgive me? Aveline didn't answer right away. She looked at her mother, truly looked, and saw not the ghost of abandonment, but the fragile truth of survival. I don't know if I can, she said, but I want to try. Marianne nodded, her face trembling with both grief and relief. That's all I ever hoped for. Outside, the evening sun began to sink behind the trees, casting golden light through the blinds, a quiet symbol of endings and beginnings intertwined. But this story wasn't finished yet. The days that followed felt unreal. Aveline found herself waking up each morning wondering if she had dreamed the entire thing. The confession, the tears, the name Marianne Hayes. But the ache in her chest reminded her it was real. The truth she had sought her entire life had finally found her, and now she didn't know what to do with it. Her colleagues at the station had no idea what had happened in that small interview room. Officially, the case was closed before it ever began. There would be no charges, no headlines, no punishment. Just two women learning how to breathe again after decades of silence. For the first few days, Aveline kept her distance. She needed space to think, to process. But her mind kept returning to Marianne, the way her eyes had pleaded for forgiveness, the way her hands had trembled as if holding invisible memories. Finally, one Saturday morning, Aveline drove to the edge of town, where Marianne lived in a small rented house surrounded by pine trees. When Marianne opened the door, her face froze, a mix of fear and hope. I didn't think you'd come, she whispered. I didn't think I would either, Aveline admitted. But I guess I had to see you again. They sat at the kitchen table, 2 cups of coffee growing cold between them. The silence was uncomfortable at first, but not empty. I used to imagine you, Aveline said quietly. Sometimes you were kind, sometimes cruel. I made up stories about you to survive. Marianne's voice was barely a breath. And now? Now I just see a woman who made a choice she thought would save me, even if it destroyed her. Tears streamed down Marianne's face, but this time she didn't look away. You did survive, she said. You became everything I wished for you, then strong, brave, good. Aveline smiled faintly. Maybe because you left me where someone could find me. For a long time, they simply sat there. No apologies left to say, no anger left to feed. Just 2 lives gently learning to exist in the same space again. Later that afternoon, Aveline drove Marianne out to Highway 40, the same stretch of road that had once been the start of everything. The trees had grown taller, and the asphalt had been repaved, but the air still carried that quiet hum of the past. They stood together by the guardrail. The wind brushed Aveline's hair across her face. Marianne reached into her purse and pulled out a small wooden cross worn and faded. I left this in your blanket, she said softly. They must have missed it at the hospital. Aveline took it in her hand, the small, fragile proof that her mother had loved her all along. Her throat tightened. I spent years searching for a reason, she said. But maybe I didn't need a reason. Maybe I just needed you to come back. Marianne nodded, eyes glistening. I came back because I couldn't die with the truth still buried. Aveline turned to her, tears streaming down her cheeks. And I couldn't live without it. They stood there for a long time, letting the silence say everything words could not. In that moment, Aveline realized forgiveness wasn't something you gave once, and it was something you chose every single day. As the sun dipped low behind the trees, she took Marianne's hand. Let's go home, she said. And for the first time in her life, Aveline knew exactly where that was. Sometimes the people who break us are the same ones who teach us how to heal. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It transforms it into something that finally lets us breathe. If Aveline's story touched your heart, leave a comment below. What would you have done if your mother returned after decades of silence? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people can feel the power of forgiveness and second chances.